So we talk about lighting in this episode. Stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss out on the latest content. What's going on, everybody? It's that one camera guy back at again with another video for you. In this episode, we're going to talk about lighting and kind of how I set up the lighting in my room and sort of what I do to get it all set up. The reason why I'm doing this has to do with trying to explore lighting. I'm not a professional at it. I'm an amateur enthusiast, and maybe someone out there like you will learn something from it, maybe from the equipment that I'm using and the strategies and methods that I'm doing. And so hopefully it'll be helpful in that sense. So I wanted to get that out of the way. First of all, I am recording with the 6400. I've got the Sigma 16. I just have OBS connected. I'm not even using this. I'm just kind of piping in straight to the Rode wireless go. So I have an ND filter on my Sigma 16, and the reason why I did also want to talk about this was in my previous video, I talked about why I didn't really go into detail why I had an ND filter on my lens. It has to do with balancing the exposure for this background right here. And so in order for me to balance it, I have to overpower the sun, use an ND filter, and all that kind of jazz. So I want to go over a little bit about that. So let's go over the lighting I have. So I have my key light, which is an Aperture 120D. It's a really nice light. I've got the aperture dome on there, but it's very expensive. And then I've got a kicker light that is kind of positioned up there with a C-stand, and that is kind of adding a rim light, hair light on me, so it's kind of add a little bit of separation. It's very subtle, but it helps. And then I have a hue light back here, so I can control the color and the output of that. So I can go into the app, I can go in here, and then I can go ahead and make adjustments of, if it even lets me. There we go. There we go. Let me get the focus back on here. Perfect. All right. So I can go ahead and adjust it and change it and increase the power output, all that cool stuff. So that's really cool. And then on this side over here, I got a Yongnuo YN600 series light LED. It just adds a really nice sort of streak of light that kind of hits that background there with that the blue wall there. And then I've got this light stick that's an RGB light stick. I would have went with like strips before, like hue strips. But what happened was I already had that. I was using it for light painting, and I said, oh cool, it has like an RGB kind of setup. So I just went ahead and jumped to that particular setup. So I really like that implementation. And then I got the screen back there. I usually put some sort of background on it and then add some decor right there just to kind of add a little bit to the depth of the room. It is a small room, so it's a little bit tough to work with. And then we talk about the lighting for the window. So what's really cool is I have these remotes. I got one for the Aperture 120D. I can turn that off, and then you can see the kicker light. So there's the kicker light from the Godox. So if I turn this on, turn it off, you can kind of see what it's doing. Then I turn this on with the Aperture 120D. So if I turn off the kicker light, you'll see what it's doing. It's adding a little bit of that light on my shoulders. It's not perfect, but I do like the additional light that it's adding on there. There's a grid on my Godox SL60W. I think that's the right term. Hopefully it is. And so that's kind of restricting that light output. So there's a grid on the actual, the little dome there. But what I want to do is balance out the lighting for the window. So I have the variable ND filter. Let me go ahead and show you. I'm going to go ahead and drop down the exposure on the ND filter to kind of balance it out better. There we go. So now we can see the outside. Just know it's around noon right now. 12:27 is the time, and the exposure looks good now, but now we need to make adjustments to the exposure. So I want to adjust my key light. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the key light a bit to kind of balance it out, and the aperture gets pretty bright and it gets hot. Not like hot like incandescent lights, but it does get warm. That exposure looks good to me. I think the kicker is still doing its thing, so I don't really think I need to adjust anything with the kicker. You'll notice that the light there, the hue light, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the power on it, use my app. There we go. Move the controller there. So now we got that popped up. Just know that I already made modifications. That RGB light gets bright and gets lower. So I already increased it with the room to get that balanced out. And then this one too, I raised that up as well so that it balances out with the exposure outdoors. I just want to stress that with this room setup that I have, is that there is a tint on that window that brings down, that knocks the exposure down. If I didn't put a tint on that window, the exposure would still be so bright, and I'd have to bump up my aperture to 100%. It probably still would not be enough to knock down that exposure. So a tint was very important to helping get that particular look in my shot, which is kind of what I like. I want some of that green, some of that tech in the room, and I want that vibe that's going on right there. So if you're curious about the equipment or gear, it's all posted down in the description below, so if you want to see what's going on there. But that's the setup. I've got a key light, which is the Aperture 120D, and for those of you on a budget, I would recommend that you don't get the Aperture 120D. I've been exploring the Godox SL60W. I hope that's the right name. It's cheap, it's affordable, and it produces the same similar output. You just need to buy some modifiers. The Aperture 120D is really expensive, it's like 600 bucks, and now the newer one's like $750. So the Godox SL60W, which I'm using as a kicker light here, can be used as a key light, and then you can use it as an accent light over there. I would use that. So for half the cost of the Aperture 120D, you can get all those 3 lights, you can get some modifiers on there and won't break the bank. It's still expensive, I get that, but it's much cheaper than just buying one Aperture 120D for this particular setup that I'm doing in this room, which is what I'm doing. So that's my lighting setup. Let me know what you're using, if you're using any lights, what's your setup, or maybe you have some recommendations, but that's what I'm doing with my room in terms of getting the light kind of going in here. And that's going to do it for me, guys. Don't forget to smash that like button, get subscribed, hit that bell notification, and I'll catch you on the next video. And man, it is hot in here. There's no AC. Peace.
I left my heart in California. I let it go deep into the blue. I could be happy in California.